Omaha Beach survived the fury of D-Day. The real test came the next morning, not from shells, but from success overwhelming the sand itself. By mid-morning, on the 7th of June, 1944, the sand below Vieilleville and Saint-Laurent was no longer defined only by wrecked landing craft and casualties. It was defined by accumulation, crates, fuel drums, ammunition boxes, signal equipment, rations, spare parts, field kitchens, medical chests. By midnight on June 8th, D+2, only 6,614 measurement tons had been discharged at Omaha, about 26.6% of the planned 24,850 long tons, leaving early beach dumps vulnerable and exits congested, as detailed in official histories like Ruppenthal's logistical support of the armies. The guns were quieter than the previous day. The arithmetic was more dangerous. Commander John L. Hall, Jr., commanding Force O, had overseen the naval side of the assault for the U.S. 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions. His responsibility did not end once infantry crossed the shingle. The beach had to become a port. Below him on the sand, Navy beachmasters, particularly men of the 6th Naval Beach Battalion, were trying to impose pattern on disorder. They wore colored brassards and carried signal flags, but their authority came from necessity. Every landing craft needed direction. Every driver needed routing. Every sector needed a function. The plan assumed momentum. The reality was friction. Allied planners had not improvised logistics casually. Months before D-Day, Operation Neptune's unloading tables specified what would land, where, and in what sequence. Each beach sector was tied to specific inland exits: D1 at Vieilleville-sur-Mer, E1 at Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer, E3 near Colville. Those draws were supposed to act like arteries. On June 6th, they nearly failed. German resistance, particularly from elements of the 716th Infantry Division and reinforced strongpoints, delayed clearance of the exits. The 111th Engineer Combat Battalion and other engineer units worked under fire to breach obstacles and fill craters. By nightfall, exits were open, but not optimized. Traffic flow remained constrained. Here lies the misalignment. Landing schedules did not pause to match the condition of inland roads. By dawn on June 7th, additional waves were already inbound. The first U.S. Army G4 logistics summary for D+1 recorded that roughly 34,000 additional men and more than 3,000 vehicles were landed at Omaha on June 7th. Tonnage surged. And because Mulberry A, the artificial harbor assigned to Omaha, was not yet fully operational, everything still had to pass across open sand. The beach itself was the port, and beaches have tides. The sensory reality required no embellishment. Engines idled, producing the sharp smell of exhaust over salt air. Bulldozers pushed sand into temporary causeways. Drivers shouted over surf noise and vehicle clatter. Occasional German artillery rounds still landed within range. Omaha was not yet immune to harassing fire from inland batteries near Isigny and beyond. Cargo came off landing ship tanks and landing craft tanks in rapid succession. Crates of 105mm howitzer shells, stacks of 5-gallon fuel cans, medical panniers marked with red crosses, field radios, engineer bridging equipment. Because some unloading zones were misallocated, either through necessity or confusion, units searching for specific cargo could not always find it quickly. Quartermaster officers later noted that supplies were sometimes placed in sectors different from the pre-invasion plan due to congestion or navigational adjustments offshore. The result? Duplication in some areas, shortages in others. The Omaha Beachhead official history notes that tonnage moved for the day was only 1,429. A small figure in view of needs, but the start of rapid expansion, highlighting how initial shortfalls forced reliance on vulnerable open beach dumps during the early days. Emergency beach dumps, established by engineer special brigades on 7th and 8th June, quickly accumulated supplies in exposed positions along the high water line, with discharge lagging far behind schedule. The scene lacked cinematic explosions, but the friction of mismatched throughput was no less perilous. Lieutenant General Omar Bradley's First Army could not afford delay. The operational objective, after securing the beachhead, was expansion toward Issini to link Utah and Omaha, and inland toward St. Lo. The German 352nd Infantry Division, which had contested Omaha heavily on D-Day, was still active inland. Ammunition consumption was high. Bradley later wrote that sustaining momentum ashore was essential to prevent German regrouping. Supplies had to flow. The Allied logistical philosophy emphasized overwhelming buildup. The concept was simple: land faster than the enemy could react. But on June 7th, that philosophy nearly outran its own infrastructure. Consider the mechanics. Landing craft discharge cargo. Trucks move forward to collect. Exit routes constrict near cratered draws. Traffic slows. Incoming craft continue unloading. At E1 and D1, engineers were still improving surfaces. The 1st Engineer Special Brigade reported that full grading and widening of the E3 draw had not yet been completed, limiting sustained two-way traffic through the Colleyville exit. Soft sand trapped wheels. Military police and beach masters attempted to regulate vehicle priority, fuel and ammunition first. But identification under field conditions was imperfect. The beach could receive more than it could clear. After-action reports from engineer units describe continuous operation of bulldozers and graders to widen lanes. Equipment ran hot. Maintenance crews improvised repairs with limited spare parts. Operators worked extended shifts. One lesser-known but documented detail: German prisoners captured on June 6th were soon employed under guard in labor details to help move supplies and clear debris once the security situation permitted. Logistical necessity overrode symbolism. Still, by midday on the 7th of June, stockpiles remained exposed. A beach dump is not a warehouse. Ammunition crates stacked on open sand are vulnerable to weather and enemy fire. Fuel cans, if ignited, could create cascading hazard. Naval officers understood this risk. So did Army quartermasters. The myth is that Omaha's danger ended with the silencing of the strongpoints. In reality, a concentrated artillery strike on supply piles could have been catastrophic. There is no evidence that German forces had clear visibility or opportunity to target these dumps systematically on the 7th of June, but the risk was real enough that urgency intensified. Time pressure was not theoretical, it was operational. The solution did not come from a single dramatic order. It came from layered adjustment. Beachmasters from the 6th Naval Beach Battalion coordinated directly with Army quartermasters to reassign unloading zones by supply category rather than by original sector map. The 6th Naval Beach Battalion War Diary for 7th June recorded continued congestion at principal exits even as these adjustments were implemented. Ammunition began to be grouped by caliber to accelerate identification and distribution. Fuel dumps were repositioned closer to cleared exits. Military police established controlled release waves. Trucks moved inland in sequenced blocks rather than continuous trickle. This reduced congestion at choke points. Naval authorities temporarily staggered the approach of some landing craft, holding them offshore to prevent additional piling while clearance caught up. This required coordination between ship captains and shore parties under active operational tempo. Engineers widened traffic lanes across the sand, creating more defined corridors between dump areas. Bulldozers reshaped berms to protect supply stacks from tide encroachment. These were not glamorous adjustments. They were procedural corrections made under pressure. A 7 June 1st Army Situation Summary reported that the backlog began to clear within roughly 24 hours of peak congestion as exit capacity improved. Ruppenthal's logistical support of the armies describes how beach discharge lagged critically in the first days after D-Day, with only partial tonnage achieved until exit improvements and zone reassignments accelerated clearance and reduced exposure of supply dumps. The artificial harbor, Mulberry A, was designed to alleviate precisely this scenario. Floating piers and breakwaters would allow ships to unload directly to sheltered platforms. On July 7th, however, components were still being assembled offshore. The great storm that would later destroy Mulberry A had not yet struck, but the harbor was not yet operational at full capacity. Thus, the improvisation on 7th June was not a temporary nuisance. It was a test of whether open beach logistics could sustain a growing army. The answer was not automatic. It had to be forced into existence. An engineer officer from one of the combat engineer battalions later recorded in unit history the exhaustion of men who had been clearing obstacles since June 6th and were still operating heavy equipment without full rest cycles. The work was physical and repetitive. Push, grade, clear, refuel, repeat. Truck drivers sat in long queues on sand still littered with debris from the previous day. Some had driven off landing craft less than 48 hours earlier under fire. Now they waited for routing signals while watching cargo accumulate around them. There are no famous quotations attached to this moment, no iconic images of inspiration, but the discipline required to reorganize under strain was real. The congestion at Omaha on the 7th of June was not caused by German interdiction cutting supply lines. It was caused by Allied throughput exceeding inland absorption. That distinction matters. It reveals something often overlooked. Allied logistical strength did not mean absence of friction. It meant capacity to diagnose and adapt faster than the enemy could exploit vulnerability. By the 8th of June, throughput improved markedly. Inland units reported more consistent resupply. The beachhead expanded. Isigny fell on the 9th of June, linking Omaha and Utah. The early backlog and exposed dumps did not sit long enough to become a strategic liability. Commander John L. Hall, Jr. continued coordinating naval support in Normandy. The 6th Naval Beach Battalion completed its European service and later participated in Pacific operations. Many engineers who widened Omaha's exits remained in Normandy for weeks, managing a shoreline that functioned as one of the largest temporary ports in history. Within weeks, Omaha Beach would be landing tens of thousands of tons of supplies weekly. The congestion of June 7th would become a footnote in official histories, overshadowed by the bloodshed of D-Day itself. But without its resolution, momentum inland could have slowed. The men directing traffic with flags and armbands, did not receive campaign headlines. Some would later move forward with advancing units. Others would remain behind, managing ever-growing waves of cargo as the Allied buildup intensified. For truck drivers, engineers, quartermasters, and naval beach personnel, 7 June was not a day of dramatic assault. It was a day of recalibration. No decisive firefight, no breakthrough charge. Just sand, crates, engines, tide, and the knowledge that delay had consequences. Omaha Beach did not choke, because German artillery destroyed it. It nearly choked because success produced weight faster than the beach could carry. And for 24 hours, the outcome depended less on gunfire than on whether men with clipboards, bulldozers, and signal flags could reorganize faster than congestion could spread. They did, and the war inland continued, not because logistics were flawless, but because they were corrected in time.